That's it for all my questions.
And welcome to another episode of Second Mind Podcast. I am your host, WIZE. And my next guest, I'm honored to have him. He's a passionate advocate, educator, a mentor who has transformed personal challenges into a mission of empowerment. Growing up in Manchester, New Hampshire, Thomas faced the harsh realities of bullying and a system that often misunderstood neurodiversity. Yet through the solace found in poetry, novels, and music, he discovered a sanctuary that not only offered escape, but also ignited a lifelong passion for storytelling. Welcome to the show, Thomas Wilson.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing well.
That's good. That's good. But so let's just jump right into this. Can you share how storytelling became a sanctuary for you during your early life challenges?
Absolutely. So my life has definitely been full of hardship. It's been full of joy as well. But definitely as a young kiddo, I had a real connection to storytelling and to the written word. I remember, oh my gosh, longer than I can actually remember. I would always ask my family members to read to me. I would ask people to tell me stories, and had some key storytellers in my life who taught me the value, but also the dangers of storytelling, which is a big reason I'm so intentional with my storytelling. And so, as a young kid, especially before I realized I even had mental health needs, stories were my vessel. They were my favorite art form. They were my identification of the world. They were what made me happy, what made me sad, what brought me value. And then when I was younger, around 8 years old, I got diagnosed after a really significant loss in my life. And I always tell people I try to be intentional. I try to only tell my story. And that's very important to me. It's a big thing I learned in storytelling is stories have power. And so when I tell my story, I share my power with the world, but I always try to honor those who may not want their story told. But anyways, going back to this story of my life, I transitioned from what many people called a very powerful, very capable kid to in the school system, I became a disruptive, problematic, you know, good for nothing is what some of my teachers told me. There was worse, but I'm not going to try to trigger your audience. And so at a very young age, in my struggle with mental health, that became my life. Stories became my expression, my ability to connect to peers, my stubbornness in knowing that there was value in me despite what people told me. Um, and through a lot of my life, stories really also taught me that many people like me are going through similar struggles. There's pain, there's hardship in this world, but stories are as much human as we are. They help us to explore, to identify, to understand ourselves. They help us to find the people we need to in life. And throughout my life, as I started getting older, I started writing, telling my story, publishing books. And then about 12 years ago, I ended up in healthcare, but I really started emphasizing on storytelling, telling my story to help people build real life skills, work as a mentor, carry over that work. And then in 2021, I opened my business, R Niche Creative Advocacy. At a point where I'll be honest, I was not taking the best care of myself. And I remembered those moments when I was a real young kid. I loved them. It was my expression. I knew there were a lot of people who loved stories just like me. And I said, I'm going to become a storyteller with a purpose. And I opened my work. Um, since then, in December 2021 is when I opened my business. I wasn't fully operational until about mid year 2022. But if there has ever been a testament for me of how much we crave stories, how much we love stories, how beneficial they are by helping us express our voices or learn how to do math or play and explore a world that may be full of fantasies or even just release ourselves from pain. That is that.
Um, I'm a D&D player, right? So, what inspired you to integrate Dungeons and Dragons into your mentorship and advocacy work?
Um, so I'll be honest, I recognized at a young age, well, not a young age as a player. I've been playing for about 13 years now. I recognized in myself how it helped me to process and problem solve. I also acknowledged it's a great game for some escapism or to process stress or anxiety, as well as I've made a ton of friends over the years through D&D. And so in my day job where I work, they asked me if I'd run a game for the community and they asked me to try to find ways to help. And so I was running through different ideas. So, well, there's obviously math, there's obviously, self advocacy skills, things like that. And I'll be honest, I didn't know a ton, especially as much as I do now about this. And so when I was playing it, one of the key things I noticed is, oh my gosh, this is causing people to really think about critical thinking. Like, what are they doing? How are their actions going to impact things? And then I also noticed that it was really great at practicing real time math skills, which I hate math. I'm not a big math person, but I do a lot better with it when there's a fantasy character. And so as I started doing this more and more, I realized that this game, Dungeons and Dragons, is so clearly written by the neurodiverse community and people thinking about real life skills. And so I kept applying it more and more, realized it's great for people with vision impairment. It can help them visualize and access media. I started playing with people, who had depression and other things like that. And I realized it was, people were laughing and playing and embracing the game. And then since then, it's been about, oh my gosh, I think like almost 10 years that I've been doing this in a program, and the results have been amazing. Like there's so many creative games that we can do, but Dungeons and Dragons, it creates this safety net for precarious decisions, for us to express ourselves, to, kill a monster if we so choose, to process our traumas, all these amazing things. And it really got started in that active play and in that expression of the game. And to this day, I continue the work, not just because it's so beneficial, but because I love it. Just getting together with a group of people and being ridiculous and wild and just having fun,
Yeah.
but at the same time developing skills. It's a beautifully transcendent experience.
Oh, listen, you ain't got to tell me. I love playing D&D. I've missed playing with. It was actually a few of me and my coworkers. We had a game going. We weren't able to sustain because people came laughing and everything, but it was a great experience, and I love the fact that you can be so creative and you dive into building your character. And so you can be as creative as you want with your character. And so I could see how it's beneficial in these programs so that these people, if they're suffering from something or whatever it is, they can dive into this character and escape for a while and find somewhere where they can find a creative space.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing about D&D is it really can just bring together people like complete strangers. And people can develop lifelong friendships from it. And I think one of the greatest parts of it as well is when it's done well by a good game master, it's also, like you said, just a beautiful creative experience. The amount of people I know who have found inspiration for their writing or like for podcasts or even just like to go out into the community a little bit more confidently and express their art. It's a really beautiful thing.
How do you approach building inclusive communities for neurodiverse individuals?
Um, so I will say I'm lucky at this point where I get a lot of feedback and I get a lot of inspiration. So it's gotten a lot easier over the years, especially with all the, hundreds of hours of with thousands of this point experience I have in it. Um, but I think it's also a lot easier than some people think. There are definitely hard elements of it, but I think the first part is really working to create a space with respect. I was actually just doing a talk earlier today, especially with when you're working with youth or people who have been through the system or have experienced trauma. They're very good at understanding when they're not going to be respected or their feelings are going to be dissuaded or annoyed or, I mean, not annoyed, ignored or misplaced. And so every time I try to create a space, I try to create one where everybody can express their feelings safely, where there is an understanding that everyone will be respect, no matter if we're frustrated, angry, or having a bad day. And part of that is understanding. We can show up to a game, we can show up to a storytelling session really excited, and then 5 minutes before you open that door, the whole world can fall apart. And because of that, it's so important not to shame people or to judge them or to kind of put or project our own worries onto people. Especially working with a neurodiverse community, so many people are shamed on a daily basis for being different or taught not to ask questions or in general have just been through years of, people kind of doing that thing or what I always call the hey buddy move where someone shows up to a program and instead of learning the person's name, they just call them my friend or hey buddy, which is, a great way to remove someone's identity from that group, but not a great way to actually treat someone like a person. So I work really hard to say the names. There are definitely moments where I get really subconscious and I fall back on that, but I try to adjust and apologize. And then another major aspect of it is working with the sensory needs of people. So whether or not I have, a space where people can go that's dark or they can get out of the lighting, I always try to have a designated space where people can move. Like I have one group where I work with youth and we have rolling chairs. And I hate to do this, but I always have to say, please don't roll because you're gonna run into a wall or you're gonna hit something. And that has happened countless times. So what I've applied is a small designated spot in the room where people can twirl in their chairs, where they can roll, where they can do whatever. And that may not seem important to some people, but that is helping them get their fidgeting out. That is helping people get their stress out, their worry, their need to move, maybe some anxiety they have. It's a beautiful thing. And then the last thing I really want to say about sensory friendly events and making that accessible is it's really important to keep communication going constantly. Um, and that's where a lot of respect ties in because when people know they're respected, they're gonna be more open about their stress or their anxiety or their sensory needs. And I know a lot of people nowadays, they don't like the word sensory friendly or they think it's not needed. What it really means is making sure someone's not sensory or even just mentally overwhelmed. And I think a lot of us have been in a space, whether it's a grocery store or a concert, a family space where we just felt overwhelmed, and making sure we provide spaces where people don't have too harsh lighting or They can, it doesn't get too loud, or even just where there's a tactile object someone can play with. It's a really beautiful way to say, I see you, I acknowledge you, but also provide an element of healthcare realistically within a space and within an event that acknowledges a person.
Yeah, absolutely. um, so what challenges have you faced in advocating for neurodiversity, and how have you addressed them?
I always love that question. Um, the biggest thing right now, I think, is a shifting mindset towards the idea of, well, there's definitely two. I'll start with this one. There's definitely a shifting, I think, mindset towards the idea of accessibility, um, as well as, some of the accommodations people seek. I think a big thing right now is there's a lot of people who argue people shouldn't have accommodations, or they shouldn't have special things added to their setting or their needs. And I think a lot of that comes from misidentification of what these actually are. And I'm not going to get political. I'm not a political person. I don't believe in being political, especially on a podcast where I'm the guest. That's just not fair to you or the audience. But I think a lot of that mindset is a frustration. And I think that's the second thing where so many of us have experienced such a harsh transition in care, or they've seen something happen and it hasn't happened for someone they love, or realistically, we've just had days or weeks where we're just overly stressed. And so when people show up, one of the hardest things right now is that anxiety, that stress, that worry. Or when I'm having conversations with people, people get very judgmental or worried about being emotionally honest about what they're afraid of or what they don't want to see. And so in all of these situations, one of the things that I try to do is just be kind and patient and empathetic. Empathy goes a long way in this world, and because of that, I think there's so much value in it. And I know it can be hard. I know we can have a lot of different things going on. And the other thing that I try to apply because of that is patience and forgiveness. There is so much in this world that can be good things that can be done by not shaming the people around us just because they have a different mindset or they're having a bad day. And along with that, if someone's having a bad day or something goes on, not not forgiving that person because of that is a great way to push that person out of your life, even if they were supposed to be meant there for 30 seconds or otherwise. We all need patience. We all need forgiveness. We all need empathy. And giving that to a stranger, giving that to a new friend is a beautiful act.
Absolutely. How, but going back to D&D and everything, how do you navigate the balance between fantasy and reality in therapeutic storytelling?
Definitely. So a big part of that is um oh my gosh, it's definitely a line to walk sometimes. I've done events recently where there's been several people who show up without signups. I have had events where people are regularly attending and they are looking for the same thing. And so some of that in the work that I do is that sensory friendly work. Well, much of it is that sensory friendly work. But part of it is also asking the right questions or being mindful with my actions, creating opportunities where people can be creative and express themselves and embrace their pride or their creativity with gumption. Another thing is also it's I myself am so often used to being the only person that it's very easy for me to treat people with respect. And it's some of these things may seem very simple, they may seem very obvious to a lot of people, but a lot of those components are actually parts of care. They're parts of making sure someone can access and speak up when they need to. They like respect is a huge component, and alongside that, it's a huge component of people expressing themselves in a trusting space. Listening to listen is a huge part of respect, and it I don't mean just listening to hear someone. I mean listening to listen, not to respond, not to make a decision, but to actually hear that person. And so when I apply a lot of these skills, the other thing that we do is when I'm asking those wise questions, along with listening to listen, utilizing respect and empathy, I am able to really invest with that person briefly and have an interaction where their ideas can be embraced and they can either slay the beast, defeat the king, or help their allies. And so in all of that, a big part of it is being mindful, knowing how to interact with youth in a way in which they are able to trust the space enough to be wild at one point and very mindful in another. But it's also, I'm going to try to be quick because this I've been rambling for a little bit here. But the other aspect of it as well is knowing how to utilize the space and maintain the energy. There's a lot of power and a lot of therapeutic practice in helping peers engage well and cohesively. And that can be the hardest part of being a game master, but it's also one of the most beneficial pieces when people meet new friends or get to see old friends and play and engage on a new level, or get to build and utilize teamwork along with that respect and empathy and everything else. It creates a goal that has to be achieved. And so at the end of the day, if you can utilize all of this well, and again, these are very like, this is a very brief overview that is has a lot more intricacies than I can go into now. But when you utilize these well, you can create a therapeutic environment, which I myself am not a therapist. So when I say therapeutic, I mean like social play, engagement, all of those things. You can create a space where people feel better, relaxed, happier when they leave, and they can share their voice. And I do want to give a highlight to all of the therapists out there who are utilizing D&D for skill sets even I can't teach, and they are running amazing programs. There are people out there doing it, and those numbers are actually rising because this game D&D or Dungeons and Dragons is being seen globally as a great way to teach these skills and apply things that even I can't do.
Yeah. Excuse me. What what can you elaborate on the concept of building bridges in your work?
Absolutely. So a big part of my work, whether it's connecting businesses to the neurodiverse or other communities, perhaps vision impaired, or perhaps even people who don't have a diagnosis but are seeking sensory friendly work or play, whether it's helping peers connect and emphasize making friendships and accessing community spaces in a more mindful manner, or even if it's just jumping on a video call and spending time interacting and trying to create a like join in a creative mentorship session. What it really is when I say building bridges is it's laying the foundation for people to access their community or make friends or embrace their power so that they can go on and live their best life. And to emphasize that even more, what I mean by that is when you're accessing the community, it's actually finding the pathway to access your community. A lot of people may not realize this, but getting out in a lift or getting to a store can be a task for a lot of people, like a very hard task. So helping them find the foundations to get out and do that on a regular basis is incredibly valuable to them. If it's a business looking to learn more, what I do is I help them understand some of the needs of the community and express what that community needs and help them learn how to do that. So by building bridges, we literally create that span between two communities that want to cooperate. If it's youth looking to make friends, it's quite literally spanning that gap. Once again, helping people find out what their interests are, what their passions are, what their hope is in their friends, as well as understanding and creating a space where they can come together and engage and have fun and laugh and play. And if someone's seeking more of a skill building exercise, one of the great things about that is the foundations of communication and understanding how to communicate, how to advocate, how to build those skills ongoing, but also how to rely on an adult who is also going to treat them with respect, but also understand that there are more than one pathway to success in this world. So when I do that, a lot of the time it's an ongoing communication and practice of skills and helping those people find those foundations to their community, to their friends, to who they want to be when they're older through a dedicated practice of those skills.
What advice would you give to individuals struggling to find their voice or share their story?
The first thing I would say is don't give up. That's a big thing. I always like to say the only way you can't achieve something, like the only guaranteed way you can achieve something in this world is to give up on it. And I know there's a lot of people out there in this world who are struggling, who are hurting, who are in pain or feel alone or lost. And I'm not here to say that those feelings don't matter, that they're not valid, that no matter how many people tell you you're wrong for feeling them, that you are wholly wrong. There's a lot of reasons in this world, especially within the last, oh my gosh, 10 years. There's been so many wild things that have happened, so many worrisome events, so much news that is depressing, or so many lack of funding for programs, or all these really things that seem to be getting worse on a compounding basis. That being said, you can't give up. You got to keep trying. Just because one day things go wrong doesn't mean it's going to continue. Just because 6 months of people telling you can't doesn't mean that's true. But also, you got to put in the effort. You got to work. We can't expect good things to just come to us in this world. We have to put good back in. We have to continue to put in effort. And that being said, I know that may seem very simple, but what I mean by this is we have to also treat ourselves well. We have to own our confidence, understand where our emotions are coming from, why they're happening, work on them, process them. We have to put our best foot forward. And what I mean by that is making sure that we are giving the world the truth of what truly makes us special, what makes us unique, what makes us valuable, and then we have to keep moving forward. There was this great song, I can't remember the title of it, but it basically said if you just keep moving, even if the devil's got you by the heels, he will eventually let go. In that song, the message really was like the bad things are going to stick with you, but if you put in that effort every day, and some days you may need to stop for a few hours, and that's totally fine. But the more effort you put in, the more, well, good things will happen. And I want to not ramble on this one, but the last thing I really want to say is in these efforts, just because the thing that you think you need doesn't work out, doesn't mean there isn't something else out there that's better for you and is a better situation, a better person, a better job opportunity, a better community resource. It doesn't mean it's out there, and we just got to keep being willing to wander sometimes. And really, the last thing I want to say is, because this happened to me, and I really want to emphasize this, if a community program says you're too hard to work with, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the case your entire life. Or you're having a bad day and you need to take a break from a community program you love, that's okay too. These are all human experiences, and we deserve, and not just for ourselves, we don't just deserve this for ourselves, but we deserve this for our future to succeed and to thrive. And nothing's going to be perfect, but we can't give up.
You mentioned a song about something about a song. Can you share how music complements your storytelling and advocacy efforts?
Yeah, I'm a big, I don't always listen to music as much as I used to, but I love a good song that talks about the human experience. I love how it can cause me to be inspired or be devastated for a moment. And I love to turn people on to songs that will either uplift them or inspire them. I mean, we've had so many great musical advocates in this world, people who have fought for communities that many never would because they didn't know how to do it at the time. Like I know Bob Dylan has so many great protest songs about things that he viewed he was wrong. Johnny Cash's Empire of Dirt, or I always confuse that with he did a cover of a great metal song, and I always call it Empire of Dirt because it's just this guttural, very visceral human song. Um, but that song always makes me feel connected to how my humanity and my pain, and I feel real value in that. So when a good song is worthwhile to people, when it can inspire, I love to pass it along and I love to use it to motivate myself because just like I was saying, there are days that are hard, there are days where everything sucks. And if I can find either beauty in my pain or help somebody find that or the motivation they need in their pain or their joy, I find there is something, well, very rarely, there is something as powerful as music.
What what future projects or initiatives are you excited about in the realm of storytelling and mental health?
So right now, I mean, for myself, I have several. I'm working on some new camps and new classes and things, but I think one of the things that I'm most excited about right now, and I say this as someone who works with youth on a regular basis and people in the Gen Z generation, I think one of the things that I'm most excited about that I'm not doing personally myself is how much these new generations are dedicated to mental health and to bettering and understanding the people around them. Like the stuff that I see Gen Alpha or Gen Z talk about was not something that I talked about when my generation. I would have loved it more, but I see so much promise and love and empathy in those young people. And for myself, I am working constantly on several new programs and classes for youth. And I think those would not happen without the generation's emphasis on that.
um how do you measure the impact of your mentorship and storytelling programs?
So right now, um, I would say it's a day-to-day thing. There are days where I judge myself, where I worry that I'm not doing enough or try to do too much. And on those days, sometimes I do wonder if I have that impact. But then there are all these beautiful stories, all these wonderful expressions from families or um, from students who are thankful for my work, or young kiddos or adults who are so excited that they're laughing and getting enthusiastic and joining in on the story. Um, and I think those moments are always the best ones, those subtle, kind of continuous moments where people say thank you or they smile when a story idea comes up, or they're, I mean, even just yesterday I got a note from someone I was helping with some writing and their expression of themselves, and the parent literally sent me a note that said thank you so much for working with him, and his work has grown so much. And so when I see things like that, to me, whether on the good days or the bad, those are the signs of the impact. Those are the things that inspire me to do the work more. And on top of that, I would also say one of the big signs is the friendships that are made, the closeness, the empathy, the kindness that people have developed with complete strangers at one point who now are close friends. They may not seem like the biggest thing to some people, but to me, that's the heart of the work. That's the truest sign of success.
Oh yeah, no, it even with the podcasting, the networking I've been able to, and the relationships I've been able to build have been amazing. Just being able to connect with people, with like-minded people, and build and truly really build relationships with people that are going to be lifelong friends. And it's been an amazing experience for me doing the podcast for 5 years now, and I just love the fact of how, at least in the independent podcasting scene, how this community is just so tight, and try and looks out for each other, and tries to uplift and share knowledge. And so I get that aspect of it. I love that, the community aspect of whatever you're building, because anything you work on, whether it's your field or whatever lane someone else is in, you have to build that community.
Absolutely.
So what role? Oh, sorry, no, I'm skipping too fast. Can you discuss the importance of intentionality and compassion in your storytelling approach?
I'll do my best. It's a big one. I think the biggest purpose of that is, oh my gosh, so many different thoughts running through my head. I think the first one is making sure that the events match the needs. So many people I work with, they're not looking for a giant event or a story that's going to be super dark, or one that's going to talk about like things like abuse or neglect and things like that. And so I think the biggest thing with intentionality is me making sure that I supply that. I provide a high quality intentional service that's actually going to match the needs of people. And I've worked with people who have told me that I need to charge more, or I need to stop doing, certain events because they're not paying. And my when I hear those things, one of the things it brings me back to is the intention of my work in general, which is to serve people who are not always able to pay their bills or not always able to impact the world they want because they don't have something they can access. And so, also in my intentionality, it's also making sure that I myself am not giving away too much about the people in my life. I know I've met a lot of public speakers who are very open about their relationships with the people in their life. But I acknowledge this is not just my journey, but it is my story to tell. And so the people I love and the people I've lost and that pain there, I need to make sure to respect the people around me, whether I'm telling a fictional story, whether I'm sharing my story. Um, and so that's another aspect of it. But it's also just at the end of the day, not burning myself out, not trying to bury myself in my work or share too much of something. I know we've all seen those public speakers who get emotional and they cry and it feels very powerful, but it can also feel a little like someone's trying to do a sales pitch, or even I wonder sometimes if that speaker at the end of the day really really cares about how burnt out they are. At the same time, with all of this in mind, this helps me to create a pathway to honor the people that I work with, to honor their emotional level, to keep in mind their day-to-day stressors, and to really identify the idea that when we do a collaborative or a shared storytelling or a talk, um, the end goal is that everyone benefits, that we succeed, that we're more empowered. And if I'm burning myself out or the people in my audience, that's the opposite of what I'm trying to achieve.
So we've come to the part of the show where how can others get involved or support your mission to connect communities to storytelling? So I'm about to give you the solo screen, and you could answer that question.
Absolutely. So you can always contact me at ndttrpg@gmail.com. I did not realize how many of those letters sound nearly identical when I set that up, but I'll make sure that's in the show notes. You can also find me at RNH Creative Advocacy and Storytelling.net. On top of that, you can find me on LinkedIn, Thomas R. Wilson, at you'll see RNH Creative Advocacy on there. And finally, I will make sure that my link tree is provided in the link notes because I genuinely love questions. I love it when people reach out to me, when they ask, when they give me ideas. Um, and it's also this beautiful thing that I love human connection. I love meeting new people and exploring how we can all do the work together and make each other a little better off in this world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas, for being a guest. This is it's a great talking to you. I greatly appreciate you stopping by and sharing your story and telling us all the things that you're doing. But don't leave just yet. Let me close out the show, and we'll chat a little bit off the air. But thank you so much once again for being such a great guest. I can't hear you.
Thank you as well. It was a joy.
Oh, okay, now I did. All right. All right, everybody. That's another show in the books. I greatly appreciate everybody who stopped by. What's going on, CC Marie? Appreciate you for stopping by. Victor Locke, how you doing, brother? I miss you too. Thank you for stopping by and showing some love. As always, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Stuck in My Mind Podcast, as well as Real Wise TV. Hit the notification bells. Big shout out to my Real Wise fan, Poppy J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Shout out to the boss lady. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know your boy Wise does it. Peace out.